Hello and welcome to Pock and Rob. In this video I am going to be turning to a subject I've been waiting to do for a while, and you'll see why in a little bit. And it's my top 30 albums that are sophomore releases, i.e. the second album by a particular artist. In a previous video I did my debut albums, and I made the decision in that video not to include albums by artists that were famous as a result of being in a band first. For instance, Peter Gabriel. I didn't include his debut album because he actually came to fame because of Genesis. Likewise, the individual Beatles, Paul Simon, etc. I've decided not to use that distinction for this album. Before I dive into my top 30, I will remind you to subscribe if you've not already done so, to hit the thumbs up to like the video and the bell to receive notifications of future content. If you enjoy the video, please do share it with someone else, and we'll hopefully see our subscriber count continue to rise. We've got a couple of months before Christmas. It would be great if we hit 100 by then. So let's start with number 30. And at number 30, I have placed the Freewheeling Bob Dylan, his second album. The first album, I was watching a video the other day where they said he nearly killed his career before it took off, which I think is somewhat unfair. It's mostly covers. But this is an album of all original content. And it contains stuff like Blown in the Wind and Girl from the North Country, which he later revisited with Johnny Cash on the Nashville Skyline album. But it's also got things like Don't Think Twice, It's All Right and A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. It's also probably the oldest album on this entire list, sneaking in at number 30, The Freewheeling Bob Dylan. Number 29 is an album that I am only now starting to really appreciate. I think I'm going to learn to like it a lot more as time goes by. Modern Life is Rubbish by Blur. Modern Life is Rubbish was an indication of the direction that they were going to go in. It's the start of their Britpop era. It's probably the launch of Britpop. It wasn't massively successful, but everything that makes a good Blur album was contained within here and refined on something like Part Life or The Great Escape. Number 29, Modern Life is Rubbish by Blur. At number 28, I do own it, but it's I don't have the CD case available for it, and it's Choke by The Beautiful South. I did a Beautiful South video where I actually placed this as probably my second favourite Beautiful South album. This is the album that contains A Little Time, which was their sole UK number one. The best song on here is Let Love Speak Up Itself. I think that's an absolutely gorgeous track. Choke from 1990 by The Beautiful South is at number 28. At number 27 is the most recent album on this list. It came out this very year. It's The Lathams from Nothing to a Little Bit More. It is going to be in my review of the year of 2023. It will be in my top 15 albums. I can't see another 15 albums overtaking it for sure. From Nothing to a Little Bit More by The Lathams at number 27. At number 26, you're going to get a glimpse as to why it's taken so long, because I need some help. Number 26 is an album I don't own, but thankfully I know somebody who does. Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa. I think this is a great pop album. Levitating, Don't Start Now, Boys Will Be Boys, which is my favourite track on the entire record. Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia, number 26. And number 25, an album that when it came out I didn't like. I liked their hits. I didn't like the album though, but I now do. It's actually by the Pet Shop Boys. So this is the album from their Imperial phase, by which they coined this phrase themselves. Everything they touched turned to gold. And It's a Sin, Heart, What Have I Done to Deserve This? 3 massive singles on this record. We've also got Shopping, King's Cross, the best album track, because the best track on here is still It's a Sin. And One More Chance. It's a really great 80s pop album, actually by the Pet Shop Boys at number 25. And number 24 is an album that, like Choke, I own, but I don't have the CD case for at the moment. It's Meat is Murder by The Smiths. Meat is Murder, I find an uncomfortable listen, the title track. However, this album has Headmaster Ritual, Barbarism Begins at Home, Nowhere Fast, and That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And it was their sole number one album during the lifetime of the band. Meat is Murder, number 24. And number 23, an album that at this point all my credibility is just gone, but I cannot help it. I adore this band, I adore what they do. I've said before I'm going to do more videos about them, but nobody commented to say they want to see them yet. Bucks Fizz, Are You Ready? From 1982. The album is bookended by two number-one hit singles, My Camera Never Lies and The Land of Make Believe. But in between those two tracks is a plethora of great pop songs, Euro pop songs, and Now Those Days Are Gone, which is in my top 10 songs of all time. Beautiful a cappella singing. And it's the track that when people slag off Bucks Fizz and say, oh, they couldn't sing manufactured or whatever, which they were a manufactured band, you just make them listen to that track and it blows your mind because it's so well done. The song won an Ivor Novello Award, so it's not a bad song by any stretch, and it's their original version of it that was the hit. Are You Ready by Bucks Fizz at number 23. At number 22 is a band that normally do not appear this low on my ranking lists, but this is their second album, which is fine, a good, even great album, but by no means their best work, with the Beatles. So kicking off with It Won't Be Long, then we've got All I Gotta Do and All My Loving, and there are a few albums that have a better opening 3-song run than with the Beatles. The covers on here, I think, by and large, are often superior to the ones that were on Please Please Me, despite following the same formula. We have the first songwriting contribution from George Harrison in Don't Bother Me. But when you've got a cover of Please Mr. Postman and The Devil in Her Heart and the closing track, Money, you've got a really great album. They just did so much better. My number 22, with the Beatles. And rounding out this little collection at number 21, it's Killers by Iron Maiden. The last album with Paul Di'Anno as vocalist. After this, it's the Bruce Dickinson era and Number of the Beast, which goes massive, and they become the beloved heavy metal band that they are still today. Killers, a lot of the songs on here predate their debut album, and they've been playing them for a long time, so they've been honed, they've been improved. Wrathchild is fantastic and worth the admission price of the record. Murders in the Rue Morgue and Killers, great. Everything on here is written by Steve Harris, with the exception of one track, which is Killers, which is written by Steve Harris and Paul Di'Anno. Killers, iconic album cover. There are a few album covers more well known than this, or indeed have appeared on more t-shirts. Maybe Dark Side of the Moon, but not many. Killers, iconic album cover. It's my number 21. So now I just want to quickly mention why it's taken me nearly 6 months to get round to doing this video. I've had this list for a while. It's been refined. And there's a simple reason. Say hello to Joel. I wanted to do this video with Joel with his favourite Sophomore albums as well. And he's taken a while to get round to prepping it. But I'm interested. There's going to be so little crossover on our list. But I think it's interesting to hear what a 16-year-old really enjoys listening to and thinks are great second albums.
I'm really not the average 16-year-old in terms of what I listen to, as you'll see with my number 20.
Well, perhaps you'd like to start with your number 20.
Well, my number 20 is a surprise to Dad, because until quite recently I didn't like this album, and it is Ariana Grande, My Everything.
Okay.
The reason I didn't like this in the first place is because there are 4 singles on it.
Right.
And I didn't like 3 of them.
Do you like them now?
And they have grown on me a lot, which has leveled up the album.
Well, there's an album on my list coming up that wouldn't have been on this list 7 or 8 months ago. And yeah, so I can understand that you sometimes things click and they take a while.
Yeah.
I used to say that if you buy an album, you need to give it at least 3 listens before you really properly judge it. So my number 20, and one of the reasons why people enjoy your presence on this channel is because apparently they like you attacking me when I choose something by these. Richard and Linda Thompson. So, he hates Richard Thompson.
I don't think I've ever attacked you on this channel. I've only been in 2 videos.
Every time I put a Richard Thompson song or Richard and Linda Thompson song
Oh,
on
yeah.
our top 100 things, you attacked me.
Yeah.
Hokey Pokey came out in 1975. It is the follow-up to the brilliant I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight. It's nowhere near as good, but the title track Hokey Pokey is fantastic. Mole in the Hole, which is a cover, is really good fun. A Heart Needs a Home. Smithy's Glass Eye is heartbreaking. And it also contains the original version, I'm going to get attacked, of Georgie on a Spree. I'm so glad you're on this video, Joel.
The thing is, Georgie on a Spree is fantastic. Georgie on a Spree is my actual least favourite song ever.
No
which
thanks.
is saying something when WAP and Heat Waves exist. My number 19, I don't have a physical copy of.
Okay.
Because I don't think a physical copy exists.
It's not Drake, is it?
No, it's Lauren Chimarelli, Please Stop Breaking My Heart.
I have never heard of her.
Exactly. She's only got 30k listeners on Spotify. I don't even know how I discovered her. R.I.P. Ruined Me. They're both really good.
Is this why you decided you were going to agree to do a top 20 rather than 15?
Yeah, I need
Because
to-
you
I
get
need
to
to-
mention somebody
yeah.
who's never been heard of.
Yeah.
You know what? Fair dues. I'm sure on our podcast you will end up picking one of her tracks or something to play me. as
I
an
might give you
revenge.
R.I.P. or Atom Bomb at some point. Yeah.
But apparently you may not even be able to physically purchase this record.
I think I discovered her by scrolling on my Spotify Discover Your Genres page, which is like underneath the
Yeah.
search bar. And Atom Bomb, which is her most popular song, which only has 300,000 listens, which is quite low for a minor hit, even a minor hit. I liked it, and then I listened to her albums, and this is the better one of the
When
two.
did it come out?
Either this year or last.
Okay. My number 19, another album that has been growing in my affections recently, and it's Crowded House, Temple of Low Men. Sister Madley, Into Temptation alone make this album worthwhile, but we've also got I Feel Possessed and Better Be Home Soon and When You Come. And if there's a flaw in this album, it's the slightly cavernous style of production that Mitchell Froome uses on it. Temple of Low Men, my number 19.
My number 18 is an album I didn't expect to be putting on this list because it's not my favourite of this artist,
Well, that's fine.
and you don't think they have particularly good albums outside of one, and that is Ed Sheeran X.
Is that the one that's got Thinking Out Loud on it?
Yes.
Okay, Thinking Out Loud's a good song. Really good
Thinking
song.
Out Loud's a phenomenal song.
I blow really hot and cold with Ed Sheeran. I still think Divide is his
Yeah,
peak.
that is
Absolute
his peak.
I mean, I only ever listened to that once, and I probably need to listen to it again.
Yep.
I doubt it would ever make my top 20. Might
It won't,
nudge
it
into
won't,
my
it
top
won't make
30.
it, it
yeah.
won't make your top 10, 20. It's only in
Suppose
my
it
top
depends-
20 because I haven't listened to that many albums.
I suppose it depends how many terrible attempts at rapping he's done on it.
Oh, there's quite a few.
Oh, in that case, yes, you're not going to get it. At number 18 for me, I have placed Imagine. Now, is Imagine really John Lennon's second solo album? My answer is yes. The reason being is the first 3 albums that he did with Yoko, that were the Unfinished Music series, I think are a completely different beast altogether. This is, after certainly post-Beatles breakup, this is a proper album of songs, follows on from Plastic Ono Band. So I've gone with Imagine. Obviously the title track, which everybody knows, I think is hugely overrated. I know you do as well. But Jealous Guy, fantastic. How and Oh My Love, and even probably his best song that specifically references the name of his wife, Oh Yoko. It's A Crippled Inside and Give Me Some Truth. It's a great album, Imagine, my number 18.
My number 17, I don't own physically. I own all of the other albums of this artist that I've listened to, and it is Vessel by 21 Pilots. The fact that this album makes my top 20 sophomore albums list just goes to show how amazing of a duo 21 Pilots is, because this is my least favourite of their albums.
Oh, okay.
Of the 4 that I've listened to, they have 5.
Okay. Well, if you still like it enough that it's a top 20 in this particular category, then clearly you absolutely love 21 Pilots.
I do absolutely love 21 Pilots.
Okay.
And the only problem that this one has compared to the others is there's not that one track that's phenomenal the first time you listen to it.
But
Which hasn't happened to me with this one yet.
Albums need something to hook you in. Yeah. I agree with that. My number 17 is Listen Without Prejudice by George Michael. When I created this list, I didn't just take into account how much I like the album in relation to all the other albums on the list. I also took into account and considered, is it the best thing they did? And if so, if it's the best thing that somebody did, then I probably nudged it a few places higher in this sophomore albums list. And I do think this is absolutely a great album. Praying for Time and Waiting for the Day, the fantastic cover version of They Won't Go When I Go, Cowboys and Angels, and Heal the Pain, which is the best Paul McCartney song that Paul McCartney didn't write. Absolutely fantastic album. And I'd like a vinyl copy of this. I'd like to hear it on vinyl. It's my number 17.
So my number 16, I didn't even put in contention in the first place because I didn't think I had listened to it. And I looked at the back and I realised
what it is.
That I definitely have listened to this because I recognise at least half of the track names. And the other half I'm sure I've heard because you've played them in the car. Yeah. And it is Staying at Tamara's by George Ezra.
Mm-hmm. Came out in 2018, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Bunch of great songs. Pretty Shining People, Shotgun, Paradise, Hold My Girl, all amazing.
I'd like to point out the first 2 that you mentioned on that list I've kicked.
Yeah.
Love George Ezra.
Great album.
My number 16, Reckoning by R.E.M. Pretty Persuasion is great. South Central Rain is fantastic. Time After Time, Annalise, Harbour Coat, Seven Chinese Brothers. So many great songs. And because I think this is a terrific album. Oh no, I forgot to mention Don't Go Back to Rockville's on it as well. Great album. Reckoning, my number 16.
My number 15 is by Fall Out Boy and it's Underneath the Cork Tree. I don't own it, so Dad will put it here.
Yeah, okay.
Make it work for you. Great album. Not too many standout tracks other than Sugar We're Going Down. And I've only listened to it a couple times for that reason, but the times I've listened to it, I've really enjoyed myself.
My number 15 is a bona fide, full-on classic. It sold bucket loads. I believe it is the best-selling album of the 90s. What's the Story? Morning Glory by Oasis. Even people of Joel's age know Wonderwall. Don't Look Back in Anger, Champagne Supernova, What's the Story? Morning Glory. Hello, which unfortunately does have a sample or an inclusion of a bit from a song by Gary Glitter. What's the Story? Morning Glory is my number 15.
My number 14 is Dookie by Green Day. Good album.
It's got Basket Case on it.
It's quite a similar vibe to the Fall Out Boy album I just said. In the style. I get that they're extremely different types of music in that Fall Out Boy's modern rock and Green Day is very pop punk. But for both of their early periods, they were quite similar.
I like Dookie. Or more to the point, I love Basket Case. I like Welcome to Paradise.
Yes.
But the album has not gripped me in the way that I hoped it would. And I love Green Day stuff.
I think I only put it on this list because of Basket Case and Welcome to Paradise. Because I don't think I've listened to it all the way through. I think that before I've gotten to about track 11, track 12, then I've been called down for dinner or something by you, and then when I go back upstairs, I haven't wanted to put it back on for the last 2 or 3 tracks.
We'll have to give it another go. We'll both have to give it another go. My number 14, And massive improvement on the debut album for this artist, Elton John's self-titled from 1970. So some people think this is his debut album, and it wasn't. That was Empty Sky. Your Song is on here, which is known by everybody, including you.
Mm-hmm.
Border Song, which is just sublime. The Cage, The King Must Die, 60 Years On, Greatest Discovery, Take Me to the Pilot. It's a really great album, and it's one of my favourite Elton John albums from his classic era. It's my number 14.
My number 13 is one of only 2 vinyls that I have on this list.
Okay.
That I own. And that is Jess Glynne, Always In Between. It's got Thursday, I'll Be There, All I Am, all amazing tracks. And it's just a good album from start to finish, even though I can't really think of what the other songs are in my head.
My number 13 was at one point the best-selling album in the world. And it's Tapestry by Carole King. Again, people think that this was her debut. It is not. She released an album before it called, I think, Carole King. There is an argument to say that 2 of the tracks on here are covers of things that she'd written previously, like Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow and You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, which was written for Aretha Franklin, so she's kind of covering herself, although she'd never recorded them herself before. And I Feel the Earth Move, So Far Away, and it's... If it didn't have Smackwater Jack, it would be higher up on this list, because it's that good an album in terms of the songwriting on it. Smackwater Jack sucks. But the rest of the album, oh, it's fantastic. You've Got a Friends on here, her version of it. Absolutely great album. Tapestry, my number 13.
So my 12 is a very recent addition to this list. In fact, it came out only about 3 or 4 months ago. And it is Diamonds and Dance Floors by Ava Max.
Okay.
There are a bunch of really great songs on this album. There's Weapons, which was the single, the main single released. Sleepwalker, Ghost, Cold as Ice, all amazing. And it's got a really... Ava Max has a really unique, incredibly electronic pop style in both of her albums.
I have to listen to this album
And
because it came out this year. And I haven't listened to it yet.
And I have... Weapons is on my Song of the Year list.
Okay.
And so you've heard it.
Do you think I'm going to like it?
You like Weapons, is what I was about to say. You said...
Please don't demonetise me for him saying I like weapons. Not that I'm being monetised anyway. There's only...
Okay, stop using my words as well.
Oh!
Yeah.
Yes, I did quite like that song. I may well like this album. It might well make my top albums of 2023. And yeah. My number 12 is There Goes Rhyming Simon by Paul Simon. This came out in 1973. It contains Kodachrome. There is One Man's Ceiling is Another Man's Floor and Something So Right, Take Me to the Mardi Gras, Tenderness. And the one thing that I think really elevates this album above everything else in his canon is American Tune. And American Tune is one of my top 10 songs of all time. I like this album a lot, and when I hear American Tune, it reminds me that I love this album. It's that good a song. There Goes Rhyming Simon, my number 12.
My number 11 is my other vinyl that I got from this list, and it is Unorthodox Jukebox by Bruno Mars. It's so good. He's got a... This is... Bruno Mars has multiple eras, and this is his retro synth pop era. And Locked Out of Heaven's great. Treasure's
So this is
great.
the one with Locked Out of Heaven, which is good.
When I Was Your Man is a really unique pop ballad in how electronic it is, as well as being retro and
Personally,
stylish and emotional.
I don't think he's top doo-wops and hooligans.
I prefer this album to do.
But that's fair. That's fair. My number 11, before we get into our top 10, and this is probably slipped down the list because I haven't listened to it for a while. Because every time I do, it goes back up on any rankings. You go back to my 1960s ranking to see how high I placed this, because it was so fresh in my mind at the time. The Band from 1969. This is the album with King Harvest, Will Surely Come, Jemima Surrender, Up on Cripple Creek, and The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. And it's southern rock roots Americana feel, and it's a great album. Robbie Robertson died a couple of months ago, so perhaps I really ought to listen to it again just to remind myself of the genius of Robbie Robertson and the rest of the members of the band. My number 11. Into the top 10 then. Your number 10, Joel.
My number 10 is Taylor Swift, Fearless.
This was on the long list.
This is a great album, goes without saying, because it's in the list. It's also got Love Story, You Belong With Me, which are two of the best pop ballads ever, in my opinion.
Love Story is a great song, and I think it overshadows the whole album, which is why it didn't get any higher on mine.
That's fair.
My number 10. An album that has appeared in multiple videos on this channel before, for different reasons. It was my biggest ever disappointment. I really took against this album for 15 years. And then last year, when I was preparing a video on this artist as a result of going to see them live, I listened to the album again for probably the 5th attempt, and suddenly it clicked. Like Joel was saying earlier about albums that don't click. Under the Iron Sea.
I didn't put this on my long list because I haven't listened to it.
Like I say, this was my biggest ever disappointment, and yet it's now my 10th favourite Sophomore album. I can't fathom how suddenly this album has grown in my affections. It's still only my 3rd favourite Keane album, because I still prefer Strangeland and, of course, Hopes and Fears. But Under the Iron Sea.
My number 9 is Voice Notes by Charlie Puth. This album took about 3 attempts to fully click with me, and it's still my least favourite Puth album.
It still hasn't clicked with me, and I like the Puth stuff. It does contain a tension, though, doesn't it?
It has a tension, How Long, both of which are really great.
Yeah, I like the first album, and I love his 3rd album, Charlie, but Voice Notes hasn't clicked with me at all, to be honest. My number 9, the second and very sadly final album from this artist. Massively successful, huge amount of Grammy Awards, but the woman was on a self-destructive cycle. Back to Black by Amy Winehouse. This album is almost revered, given how good it is. And we did an episode on our podcast of where I introduced him to the album, and you didn't particularly like it that much at the time.
It's grown on me.
It has grown on him. And if we're ever going to do this video again in maybe 3 or 4 years' time, I bet he'll have listened to this a fair few times and it'll be on his list.
I still love Rehab. I still love Rehab.
Rehab,
still my favourite song.
Rehab, great. Back to Black, beautiful. Particularly when you hear the story of how she wrote it. And Me and Mr. Jones, which is a bit sweary. Tears Dry on Their Own, Some Unholy War, and Love is a Losing Game. Oh man, such a sad loss. She was a great vocalist talent and paved the way for someone else who will be appearing on this list fairly soon.
My number 8, again, took me multiple listens to fully get, probably about 3 or 4, and it is Avril Lavigne, Under My Skin. That kind of thing of taking multiple listens to click is very common with Avril Lavigne. I've only had one album where that hasn't been the case.
Which is?
Goodbye Lullaby. It's got Freak Out, My Happy Ending, both of which are really amazing. Like,
I'm growing to quite like Avril Lavigne.
I've influenced you.
Skater Boys, just great job.
Well, everyone will agree with that.
My number 8 is Queen 2 by Queen. Side A, The White Side, which is written predominantly by Brian May, with things like Father to Son and White Queen as it began, and then one track by Roger Taylor. And then side B, which is totally written by Freddie Mercury and is one continuous suite.
My number 7 is Adele 21.
Yeah, this is the artist that was mentioned may appear on a list later as being hugely influenced by
Amy Winehouse.
Amy Winehouse. And I also have it at number 7, which we did not plan. This is I think it's the 3rd or 4th best-selling album of all time in the UK. It is the best-selling album of the 2010s. And there's a reason why. It's because the songs on here, like Turning Tables and Rumour Has It and Rolling in the Deep and Someone Like You and Set Fire to the Rain, are just so good. And there's a reason it sold bucket loads and was the best-selling album for 2 consecutive years, which hadn't happened for a long, long time. Adele 21, both of our number 7s.
My number 6 is How I'm Feeling by Love, which Dad will put here.
Okay.
It's great pop album. Love has a really interesting style of like quite calm but also quite sad pop, but also incredibly synth heavy and incredibly technologically
I've
advanced.
heard of them. So.
And the song has a bunch of great songs: Modern Loneliness, F I'm Lonely. And the hit single from it, I'm So Tired, is well worthy of being a hit single in my opinion, though you would say otherwise based on the short bit you've heard.
Okay, that sounds like it's not going to be up my street.
But great album.
My number 6 is one of probably only 2 crossovers on our lists. It's my copy of George Ezra's Staying at Tamara's. This was my favourite album of the entire 2010s. Well, it was joint favourite, if you go back and watch that video, with Egypt Station by Paul McCartney, which says to me that I hold George Ezra in really high esteem. He's a ray of sunshine in pop music in the UK. Top 5 time.
My number 5 has appeared already on this list, so you're wrong about that only being 2 crossovers. Ooh. Well, it was before I arrived.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
There's one bad song on this album. Everything else is phenomenal.
What's the bad song?
Good question. Actually, there's not a bad song on this album.
I'm not saying there isn't, but
I was just thinking. I just had in my head that I didn't like Good in Bed because it swears.
Good in Bed is actually really quite fun.
But then I thought about it, and no, it's a really good song. Outside of the swear in the final chorus, yeah, but it's used in context.
I'd forgotten that. You brought that down so that I could mention it. My number 5. My favourite album by this band as well. It's Deacon Blues, When the World Knows Your Name. Number 1 hit album that removed Madonna, Like a Prayer, from the number 1 slot. I think this is the best thing that they ever did. It was my introduction to them, and specifically a song that you do really like. Fergus Sings the Blues. Mm-hmm. But Real Gun Kids on here, which was their first top 10 hit single. Wages Day, Love and Regret, which is my friend's favourite Deacon Blue song. Really good ballad. My number 5, When the World Knows Your Name by Deacon Blue.
My number 4 is an album I don't own, but I would like to. And it is Evolution by Sabrina Carpenter.
Okay.
It's...
Joel's a big Sabrina Carpenter fanboy.
Don't put it like that.
Maybe she's your Bucks Fizz.
No. I'd still probably say my Bucks Fizz is One Direction. Evolution is a great album. It's got a bunch of really cracking tracks. Thumbs is well worthy of being her 3rd most popular song. All We Have Is Love is great. On Purpose, Feels Like Loneliness, both really great. And I know this means nothing about the album's actual quality, but the name of the album, Evolution, it's stylized so that the E, V, O, and L are backwards. So when put in a mirror, it's love.
Oh, smart. Yeah, impressive. My number 4 is a genuine classic again. And I suspect might one day find its way onto your list, Joel.
Yeah.
Nevermind by Nirvana. It's taken me many years to love this, because I used to think this was massively overhyped, and it was one of those albums that everybody liked and loved, and I kind of went against the flow a little bit. It is obviously best known for Smells Like Teen Spirit, but it has In Bloom,
Lithium. That's my favourite.
Come As You Are, Polly, and it's just great album.
So my number 3 is another incredibly recent addition to this list that came out this year that I believe you plan on listening to for your...
Okay, go.
And it is The Good Witch by Maisie Peters.
Yeah, I will be listening to it, yeah.
It's her better of her 2 albums, even though the first one is still brilliant.
Okay.
It's got a bunch of great tracks like Lost the Breakup, BSC, You're Just a Boy, and I'm Kind of the Man. Therapy, they're all great. There's not a bad track on the album.
I haven't heard it yet.
And in fact, the worst track on the album is the title track.
My number 3, it's Elvis Costello, This Year's Model from 1978. I've had this in several lists before because I think this is it's a terrific album. It opens with No Action, which is such a great track to open the record with. This Year's Girl, and then we've got Little Triggers, just really great song. Night Rally, and it's great album. It's the first one with the Attractions, although they are not credited on the sleeve. Elvis Costello's second album, This Year's Model. My number 3.
My number 2 is the best album by this artist, and I love this artist, and it is Here We Go Again by Demi Lovato.
I'm not keen on her.
It's a pop rock album, which both their first 2 albums are, and it's great. Its solo's amazing. Here We Go Again is amazing, which is the title track.
My number 2. If you've been watching these videos for a while, it will come as no surprise that this was coming on this list. Ram. Now, this is the only album released by Paul and Linda McCartney. However, this is Paul McCartney's second album, to all intents and purposes. It may be the only one credited to him and his wife, but it is his second album. I've gained a greater appreciation for this album as a result of not listening to it for a year. I think I've sucked all the sugar out of it. But I read McCartney Legacy recently, and the work and the craftsmanship that he put into this record, you start to seriously appreciate it when you read about what he went through in terms of making it, at the same time as suing the other 3 Beatles to dissolve their partnership. So your number 1, John.
My number 1 sophomore album is Riot by Paramore.
Oh, okay.
It's a phenomenal album. There's no bad tracks. And the bonus version, the bonus edition, which is the one I've listened to first on Spotify, has an extra track, which is also phenomenal. Misery Business is deserving of being their most famous track, even though it's not my favourite. I get why it's their most popular. It's amazing. For a pessimist, I'm pretty optimistic. Is a long title, but also really good. Let the Flames Begin is great.
I'll have to give it another go.
Fences.
Properly listen to it.
Born for This.
And that's your sophomore album, number 1?
Yeah.
Cool. Mine is something that would not have been on here 6-7 months ago. It's not that I dislike the album. It's more the fact that it had not... Its charms had not been really grown on me. And then, it, bit like Under the Iron Sea, it totally clicked. The Bends by Radiohead. I really want a vinyl copy of this. I really, really do. I've had this CD a while, and I think my copy skips, certainly when I'm playing it on the car, on my iron lung. So, you know what? I've got an excuse to get a better version of it. This has Fake Plastic Trees. This has Planet Telex. It's got High and Dry, which is the only song I really knew from the album, and when it was kind of first come out 30 plus years ago. But man, I wouldn't call myself a Radiohead fan.
I don't get Radiohead at all.
And I understand that sentiment because I didn't get Radiohead at all. And then the Bends 7-8 months ago suddenly made sense.
And then OK
And
Computer came after it.
And then every track on it suddenly clicked. And I think this is a perfect album. That concludes our rundown. If you enjoyed it, please do share it. I just remind you to like, subscribe and hit the bell. And I'll be back with another video in due course. But until then, thanks for watching.